Switching now to Nebraska basketball, Keisei Tominaga working out with the Pacers today. We'll see if he gets any other opportunities to work out with NBA teams. He has until Thursday to make a decision on returning to Nebraska or going to the NBA draft. He's not the only player working out with the Pacers today, so a lot of that is obviously going to be the feedback that he gets in the next couple of days. So you're thinking, well, I think he's going to do this. I think he's going to do that. I don't think today he knows what he's going to do. He's going to right now. This is the very purpose of this is to see kind of where he stands. Now, if you look at NBA, NBA draft combine, he wasn't invited. You look at NBA draft mock drafts, not necessarily on the radar. Can change that with his ability and what he does here in the next couple of days, specifically today with the Pacers. But more than likely, I think you'll see Keisei Tominaga back. I think that's the expectation. If he does not return, does that significantly lower your interest or I guess hope in Nebraska basketball this upcoming year? Remember, they've done a good job of kind of putting a team together that not everybody's going to get minutes as far as the names that you know. Aaron Eulis, of course, brought in over from Iowa. Bryce Williams, Rink Moss, and Josiah Alec all added depth that you expect to contribute. Of course, Blaze Keita, Juwan Gary, DeMarcus Lawrence, C.J. Wilcher, all return. Then you have Sam Hoiberg from the walk-on category, Ramil Lloyd, Redford, and Eli Rice. A lot of names.
Not everybody's going to play.
Not everyone's going to play. Tominaga certainly would if he returns. It's just kind of, to me, it does hurt your ceiling a little bit because I think Tominaga's earned that. I think that he is going to go into next year. He played at an all Big Ten level the second half of the season. I think he would be, first, second team, whatever it may be, all Big Ten going into the year if you get him back. Of course, that makes a big deal.
He'd be preseason second team.
Yeah,
probably. It would. Him not coming back and going to the NBA draft would be very shocking. But if he doesn't return, in terms of my interest level for Nebraska basketball, I'm still very interested because of all the pieces that they did bring in. But as you said, the ceiling, I think it does fall a bit with the loss of Tominaga just because of what he was able to give you towards the end of last season with his penchant for explosive scoring runs, his excitement on the court, and even if he's undersized and maybe a defensive liability, the way that he works so hard to stay in position and his quick hands swiping at the ball and all that, even though he's not a lockdown defender, and he does enough to warrant the offense that he does give you on the court. So it would hurt. I don't know how many wins he's worth at this point, just because I don't know what the rest of the team looks like.
Well, let me put it this way. I think there's a lot of good pieces here that are going to fit together. I just don't know, who's your scorer if Tominaga leaves. I think DeMarcus Lawrence, we all expect to take that step. I think he would be the obvious answer because as far as long-term, prospects, I mean, he's about as good as a freshman as Nebraska's had in quite some time, projecting forward.
I mean, is Tominaga your number one scoring option? And is that feasible for the entire season?
I think so. I mean, I think you're having teams, defend him differently. But whether it's scoring or changing the way teams guard him because of spacing, he'll draw a defender out from the paint for whoever's in there if he isn't scoring, just because of his ability to shoot the ball, his ability to make the ball. But I don't know how feasible it is to have him as your number one option all season, because at some point, especially once you get into Big Ten play, teams are going to be extra physical with him, to the point of, up into a point, as to not draw fouls, but they're going to be extra physical with him. And is he going to be able to take that pounding for an entire conference schedule for an entire season? Because towards the end of the season, when he did have those scoring explosions, there was a game or two in between some of those games where it did fall off a little bit. Granted, it went back to probably where he was scoring towards the beginning of the season. He wasn't getting up into the 20s as much, but can he continue that level of scoring for an entire Big Ten schedule with the physicality that we know the Big Ten plays with, especially at that guard position? Well, he did a great job of adjusting, not just, you kind of think of him in that 3-point game, of using that, like teams overplaying and defending the 3-point line to, cuts to the basket. And, I think the next level that we've talked about before is being a playmaker with ball in hand.
Mhm.
He does pretty well with the pick and roll. He's kind of lost one of his pick and roll buddies there in Derek Walker. But that's kind of that next step if he wants to take his game to the next level, whether that be all Big Ten type of recognition or to the NBA. So I think that's there's still some things to work on with him there. But I mean, the guy was consistently averaging 20. I get what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be when you're a shooter, there's going to be games where you're just not on. You're going to find other ways to impact the game. It might be a game or two where he scores 6 or 8 points. But for the most part, I think he's that guy, and he's expected to be that guy if he returns. In Nebraska, for whatever for all the other drawbacks, I suppose, of the Hoiberg era, it's just kind of keeping that guy in place, and they were able to do that with Derek Walker. Look how much that supported them, and helped them out, keeping your best player from year to year. Obviously for different reasons and for good reasons. I mean, these guys went to the NBA and did well, but I mean, you just kind of think if you were able to pair some of the players that were, on from one team to the next, some of the better players,
Yeah.
you could have had some good pairings, and they just haven't been able to do that.
Just
What do you
missed
think
that
of
one year.
Bant? Get Banton to stay one more year with the McGowans, and that'd be kind of tough. You could have kept Isaiah Roby for one more year.
That would have been a big team. That would have been a really tall team.
Yeah, it would have been fun, and to see kind of how that worked out. I don't know how it worked out. Banton, by the time he was leaving Nebraska, was coming off the bench, despite the fact that he's an NBA player now. Of course, it took that team for Bryce a long ways until the very end of the season to really get anything going. But I think that keeping Tominaga around is absolutely huge for this
It's
team.
imperative.
The ceiling of this team. I think you could make. You hesitate to say NCAA tournament runs, but I mean that's what everybody wants to see is you make the NCAA tournament. Maybe the fair standard is to make the NIT first, but
be a really good team.
You could be a really good. I think it changes your expectation from top half of the Big Ten fighting for an NCAA tournament bid to okay, patch this thing together. They've got a good team, but it's just kind of missing that score.
I don't want it to seem like I don't think Tominaga is important or that he won't make a difference. He's very important, and he will make a huge difference on this team. And if he does come back, that could be the difference between Nebraska making and missing an NIT. Again, I'm not going to go NCAA tournament quite yet because they haven't really proven that they can get there yet as with the roster as it was constructed last year. So with all these new pieces coming in now, I think some type of continuity and having some people who were there last year at the end and somebody who played such a massive part in Nebraska being as good as they were towards the end of the season coming back would go a long way keeping this team together and taking them hopefully to that next level where we're talking making the NIT tournament.
1256 says off the text line, no chance he goes to the NBA. He's not an NBA caliber player. There are guys who are 6'9" who shoot as good as him in the NBA. He is up against it. There is, that's probably a fair statement, but I mean, he's put himself in a position to challenge that. There are guys, again, look at the Heat, 4 undrafted players in their rotation. There are guys that aren't supposed to make the league that do. And if you're in that position where the NBA is even sniffing you, then you got a chance because, of course, that's everybody's dream. Thunder Not Collins says, every time he has the ball in the hands, he has to be respected. I would argue that he needs another year in the Big Ten to get solid opportunity in the NBA and is looked at as more than just a three-point shooter. Again, I think a little bit more work in ball in hand would help out for him in his NBA dream. So I think that's what ultimately happens, but we'll see. We're kind of sweating it out with the Pacers workout today.